Over 60, eat these 12 seeds to strengthen eyes and prevent vision loss. Now I know what you might be thinking. Seeds, really? Can something that small actually protect my vision? Some of you may be nodding your head saying, yes, I've heard about natural remedies before, but others might be skeptical, and honestly, I get it. Most of us were taught that losing our eyesight is just part of aging. Doctors prescribe stronger glasses, expensive drops, or even surgery, but rarely talk about nutrition. Here's the shocking truth. New research shows that certain seeds, yes, simple seeds you can buy at any grocery store, can reduce vision decline by up to 30% in just a few months. And even more surprising, most seniors have never even heard of them. Imagine being able to read your favorite book without magnifiers, drive safely at night again, or recognize your loved one's face clearly, without the fear of fading eyesight. Sounds unbelievable. Stick with me because today I'll reveal 12 powerful seeds ranked from the least known to the most effective, that science shows can actually protect, and in some cases restore your vision. But before we dive in, do me a quick favor, hit that like button, share this video with a friend who's over 60, and subscribe to our channel. That's what gives us the motivation to keep bringing you life-changing health tips every single week. All right, are you ready? Let's start it. Why vision declines after 60? Before we talk about seeds, let's understand why vision often declines after 60. It's not simply because of age, but because of changes happening inside the eye. One major factor is oxidative stress, which acts like rust, damaging the sensitive cells of the retina. Another is chronic inflammation, a silent process that slowly accelerates eye degeneration and has been linked to conditions like macular degeneration and glaucoma. Nutrient depletion also plays a role, since seniors absorb fewer vitamins and antioxidants as they age, leaving the eyes without the protection they need. Finally, reduced circulation limits the oxygen and nutrients reaching the retina, which is why diseases like diabetic retinopathy and AMD become so common in older adults. The statistics are alarming. The CDC reports that more than 12 million Americans over 60 already live with vision impairment, and the National Eye Institute predicts that number will double by 2050. But there's hope. Large studies such as ARDS and ARDS-2 have shown that proper nutrition can slow progression and even reduce the risk of advanced vision loss by as much as 25 to 30%. So let me ask you, have you noticed changes in your eyesight lately? Is night driving harder, or does reading feel more difficult than before? What are you doing right now to protect your eyes? The truth is, vision loss doesn't have to be inevitable. The earlier you take action, the more of your sight you can preserve. And that's why seeds can make such a powerful difference. The 12 seeds that strengthen eyes and prevent vision loss. Number 1. Sunflower seeds vitamin E shields for your retina. Sunflower seeds may seem ordinary, but they are one of the richest natural sources of vitamin E, an essential antioxidant that protects the retina from oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is like rust forming inside your eyes, damaging sensitive cells and accelerating vision decline. A major 10-year study published in the Archives of Ophthalmology showed that people who consumed vitamin E-rich foods had a 25% lower risk of developing macular degeneration, one of the most common causes of blindness in seniors. I often remind my patients that small daily choices make a big difference. Mahmoud, a 67-year-old retired engineer, came to me frustrated that he could no longer drive at night. His vision was blurry and headlights were overwhelming. Instead of turning to expensive treatments, we added just 2 tablespoons of sunflower seeds to his daily routine, usually sprinkled on his salad or mixed into yogurt. Within 2 months, his night vision had improved so much that he was back behind the wheel with confidence. His story shows how something as simple as a seed can protect independence and quality of life. So let me ask you, have you noticed that driving at night is harder than it used to be, or that lights feel too bright for your eyes? If so, oxidative stress may be playing a role. My advice is simple: don't wait until symptoms worsen. Add sunflower seeds into your diet consistently, not as a one-time fix, but as a daily habit. Over time, this steady supply of vitamin E can act as armor for your eyes, helping you preserve clear vision and confidence well into your later years. Number 2, pumpkin seeds zinc, the gatekeeper of eye pigment. Pumpkin seeds are a powerful but often overlooked food for protecting vision because they are packed with zinc, a mineral that plays a critical role in eye health. Zinc helps transport vitamin into the retina, where it supports the production of melanin, the pigment that shields the eyes from harmful UV rays and blue light. Without enough zinc, this process weakens, leaving the eyes vulnerable to damage and increasing the risk of age-related macular degeneration. The landmark ARDS trial, funded by the National Eye Institute, showed that zinc supplementation slowed the progression of AMD significantly, making it one of the most important nutrients for protecting aging eyes. I recall Lillian, a 74-year-old retired teacher who described her vision as looking through fog. Reading, which she loved, had become nearly impossible. Instead of immediately recommending supplements, I suggested she add a quarter cup of pumpkin seeds to her morning oatmeal. After 3 months, her central vision stabilized and she returned to reading without magnifiers, regaining not just her eyesight but her confidence. So let me ask you, have you noticed words on a page looking blurry or that bright screens are harder to tolerate? These could be early signs of zinc deficiency. As a physician, I advise seniors to make pumpkin seeds a daily habit. Just a small serving provides a natural source of zinc along with other valuable nutrients like magnesium. They're easy to sprinkle on salads, blend into smoothies, or enjoy as a snack. Over time, these small, consistent choices can make a real difference in protecting your vision and maintaining your independence. Number 3. Chia seeds, the omega-3 anti-inflammatory warriors. Chia seeds may be small, but they are one of the best plant-based sources of ALA, or alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid that helps reduce inflammation in the retina. Inflammation is often silent, yet it slowly damages the macula and contributes to problems like dry eyes, blurry vision, and even age-related macular degeneration. A clinical trial published in Nutrients showed that seniors who consumed ALA for just 8 weeks had stronger retinal blood vessels and lower levels of inflammation. I remember Nancy, a 70-year-old seamstress, who came to me heartbroken because her embroidery work had become almost impossible. Her eyes were dry, details were blurred, and she feared she would have to give up the craft she loved. Instead of relying only on eye drops, I encouraged her to add 2 tablespoons of soaked chia seeds to her morning smoothies. Within 6 weeks, her dryness eased, her fine vision sharpened, and she joyfully returned to teaching embroidery at her community center. So let me ask you, do your eyes often feel dry or irritated, or do you notice small details are harder to see than before? These can be signs of inflammation and nutrient gaps in your diet. My advice is simple. Make chia seeds a daily habit. They are easy to mix into yogurt, oatmeal, or smoothies, and beyond omega-3s, they also provide antioxidants like lutein and zeaxanthin that act like natural sunglasses, filtering harmful blue light. By adding just a couple of spoonfuls each day, you give your eyes steady protection, improve comfort, and help preserve the vision that allows you to enjoy the details of life. Number 4. Flax seeds relief for dry eyes. Flax seeds are another omega-3 powerhouse and one of the simplest ways to relieve chronic dry eye, a condition many seniors know all too well. They help stabilize the tear film, the thin protective layer that keeps the eyes moist and comfortable. When this layer breaks down, tears evaporate too quickly, leaving the eyes feeling gritty, irritated, and blurry. A study published in the Cornea Journal found that seniors who consumed flaxseed oil daily reported a 42% improvement in dry eye symptoms in just 30 days. I think of Yosef, a 69-year-old retired bus driver who came to me complaining that his eyes always felt sandy by the afternoon. He relied on eye drops, but the relief never lasted. I suggested adding 1 tablespoon of freshly ground flaxseed to his breakfast each morning, and within a few weeks his discomfort eased so much that he no longer needed the drops. His story is a reminder that sometimes the solution is not in a bottle, but in the foods we eat. So let me ask you, do your eyes often feel dry or tired by the end of the day? If so, try making flax seeds a daily habit. Sprinkle them on oatmeal, blend them into smoothies, or mix them with yogurt. Just a small serving each day can help soothe irritation, improve comfort, and give your eyes the nutrients they need to stay healthy as you age. Number 5. Black sesame seeds, protectors of retinal blood vessels. Black sesame seeds are a traditional food with powerful modern benefits for eye health. They are packed with antioxidants, zinc, and compounds such as sesamin that help strengthen and improve circulation in the tiny blood vessels of the retina. When these vessels weaken or leak, conditions like diabetic retinopathy and macular degeneration can progress quickly. A study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food showed that seniors who consumed black sesame regularly experienced better retinal vascular function and reduced oxidative stress in as little as 6 weeks. I remember Ament, a 72-year-old man living with early diabetic retinopathy, who came to me fearful of blindness after noticing dark floaters in his vision. Along with his standard care, I suggested adding a small serving of roasted black sesame seeds mixed with honey each evening. After 2 months, his retinal swelling improved, the floaters became less frequent, and he felt more confident about his future. So let me ask you, have you ever noticed floaters, dark spots, or distorted vision? Do you worry about how diabetes or circulation issues could affect your eyesight? If so, small nutritional steps may help protect your vision. My advice is simple. Make black sesame seeds part of your diet. They can be sprinkled over rice, salads, or vegetables, and even a modest daily serving can support circulation and protect the delicate vessels that keep your eyes healthy. Consistent habits like this may not only slow disease progression, but also help you preserve the independence and clarity that matter most. Number 6. Hemp seeds guarding the optic nerve. Hemp seeds are rich in gamma-linolenic acid, or GLA, a rare omega-6 fatty acid that reduces inflammation instead of fueling it. This makes them especially valuable for protecting the optic nerve, which is the cable that carries visual information from the eye to the brain. In glaucoma, rising eye pressure and chronic inflammation gradually damage this nerve, often leading to tunnel vision and permanent vision loss if left untreated. Research published in Current Eye Research showed that seniors who supplemented with GLA slowed optic nerve damage by nearly 28% in just 90 days, a powerful finding that highlights the role of nutrition in eye health. I recall Elias, a 75-year-old retired editor, who came to me anxious about his glaucoma diagnosis. He had already started to notice narrowing vision at the edges and feared losing his independence. Along with his prescribed drops, I encouraged him to add 2 tablespoons of shelled hemp seeds to his breakfast each day. After a few months, his eye pressure decreased slightly, and scans showed slower nerve thinning. More importantly, he told me the daily routine made him feel like he was actively fighting back. So let me ask you, have you or someone you love been told you are at risk for glaucoma? Do you sometimes notice difficulty with peripheral vision? These could be signs that your optic nerve needs protection. My advice is simple. Keep following your doctor's treatment, but also support your eyes with foods like hemp seeds. They are easy to sprinkle on salads, blend into smoothies, or mix into yogurt, and with consistency, they may help guard one of the most vital structures for preserving your sight. Number 7. Saffron, nature's vision restorer. Saffron is one of the most remarkable natural compounds ever studied for eye health. It is rich in crocin and crostin, carotenoids that directly nourish photoreceptor cells, the cells responsible for turning light into images. In age-related macular degeneration, these cells gradually break down, leading to blurred central vision, muted colors, and difficulty recognizing faces. Research published in the British Journal of Ophthalmology found that saffron supplementation improved retinal sensitivity and even enhanced visual acuity in AMD patients. This means saffron doesn't just slow decline, it can actually restore aspects of lost function. I think of Abraham, a 79-year-old painter who had watched the world fade into dull colors and blurred outlines. After taking 20 milligrams of standardized saffron capsules daily for 3 months, he began to see details again. Faces became clear, colors more vivid, and he was able to return to painting with joy. So let me ask you, have you noticed colors looking faded or straight lines appearing wavy on the page? Do you sometimes struggle to recognize the faces of your loved ones? These could be signs of macular degeneration. My advice is simple. If you consider saffron, choose a standardized supplement of 20 milligrams daily rather than relying on small amounts used in cooking. Consistency and quality matter, and with the right approach, saffron can become a powerful ally in protecting and even restoring your vision. Number 8. Walnuts, DHA for brain and eye health. Walnuts are one of the richest plant-based sources of DHA, an omega-3 fatty acid that is absolutely essential for both the brain and the retina. In fact, the retina has the highest concentration of DHA in the entire body, and without enough of it, the cells that process light begin to weaken. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition found that people who regularly ate walnuts not only had sharper central vision, but also enjoyed better cognitive function, showing how closely connected brain and eye health truly are. This isn't surprising, since both organs rely heavily on DHA to maintain their structure and performance. I think of Margaret, a 71-year-old retired teacher, who came to me worried about her memory slipping and her vision becoming fuzzy when reading. She admitted she rarely ate fish, which is a common source of DHA. I suggested adding a small handful of walnuts to her daily routine, either as a snack or sprinkled over her morning oatmeal. After a few months, she noticed she was reading with less strain, and she even told me her recall during conversations felt sharper. While walnuts didn't replace her medications or correct everything, they became a simple, natural way to support both her vision and her mind. So let me ask you, Do you find yourself forgetting names more often, or struggling to read clearly for long periods of time? Do you rarely eat fish or other sources of omega-3s? If so, your brain and eyes may not be getting the DHA they need. My advice is straightforward. Aim for one small handful of walnuts each day. They're easy to add to salads, oatmeal, or enjoy on their own, and they provide a powerful double benefit, protecting your eyesight while also keeping your memory sharp. Small daily habits like this add up, and the sooner you begin, the more protection you give to both your vision and your brain. Number 9. Almonds vitamin E against cataracts. Almonds are another excellent source of vitamin E, a powerful antioxidant that protects the eye from oxidative stress. Over time, free radicals can damage the proteins in the lens of the eye, leading to clouding and eventually cataracts. Harvard researchers found that diets high in vitamin E-rich foods could lower the risk of developing cataracts by up to 25%, a significant reduction for such a simple dietary change. Vitamin E also helps slow the progression of age-related macular degeneration, giving it a double benefit for senior eye health. I think of Robert, a 68-year-old accountant who came to me worried after his eye doctor mentioned early cataract formation. He wanted to do everything possible to slow it down. We talked about his diet and noticed he wasn't getting many antioxidant-rich foods. I suggested he add a handful of raw, unsalted almonds each day. He kept a small jar on his desk and made it part of his afternoon routine. Over time, not only did his eye exams remain stable, but he also told me he felt more energized in the afternoons and had fewer cravings for unhealthy snacks. So let me ask you, have you noticed your vision becoming cloudy or light glare bothering you more than before? Do you have a family history of cataracts? These could be signs that your eyes need extra antioxidant support. My advice is simple. Make almonds a daily habit. One small handful is enough to give your body a boost of vitamin E without adding unnecessary calories or sugar. Choose raw, unsalted almonds for the best benefit. It's a small change that supports not just your vision but your overall health, helping you stay sharp and independent as you age. Number 10. Pistachios natural sunglasses. Pistachios are more than just a tasty snack. They are packed with lutein and zeaxanthin, two carotenoids that act like natural sunglasses for your eyes. These powerful nutrients filter harmful blue light from screens, LED lighting, and sunlight, reducing the stress that constant exposure places on the retina. Over time, this protection can make a real difference. A review published in JAMA Ophthalmology confirmed that higher intake of lutein and zeaxanthin is linked to a lower risk of age-related macular degeneration and slower disease progression. I recall one of my patients, a retired pianist in his 70s, who came to me with constant eye strain after long hours of practicing. He described the bright lights reflecting off sheet music as painful, and said he often needed to stop earlier than he wanted. I suggested adding a small handful of pistachios to his daily diet. Within a few weeks, he reported far less eye fatigue and was able to return to longer practice sessions without discomfort. For him, pistachios became a simple but powerful way to extend the joy of his music. Now let me ask you, do your eyes feel strained after spending hours on a computer, smartphone, or tablet? Do you find yourself squinting under bright lights or struggling with glare? These may be signs that your eyes need more protection from blue light. My advice is to make pistachios a regular part of your diet. Just a handful each day provides not only lutein and zeaxanthin for your eyes, but also healthy fats, protein, and fiber for your overall health. They are easy to enjoy on their own, mixed into salads, or paired with fruit for a balanced snack. Consistency matters, and by giving your eyes these protective nutrients every day, you may reduce strain, slow long-term damage, and keep your vision sharper for years to come. Number 11. Hazelnuts boosting circulation. Hazelnuts are rich in magnesium and B vitamins, nutrients that play a key role in keeping blood vessels healthy and ensuring steady blood flow to the retina. Poor circulation is often an overlooked cause of vision decline, because when the retina does not receive enough oxygen and nutrients, it becomes thinner and more prone to damage. European studies have shown that higher magnesium intake is linked to healthier retinal thickness and a lower risk of glaucoma, a disease that often progresses silently until vision loss becomes noticeable. I think of Helen, a 70-year-old retired librarian who came to me with concerns about her family history of glaucoma. Her scans showed early thinning of the retina, and she wanted to take proactive steps. Along with her prescribed care, I suggested she add hazelnuts to her diet. She began blending them into smoothies and eating them as a snack, and over time her eye pressure stabilized and her scans showed no further thinning. So let me ask you, have you ever been told your circulation is weak, or do you worry about glaucoma because it runs in your family? If so, consider making hazelnuts a regular part of your diet. Just a handful a few times a week can naturally support circulation, protect your retina, and provide long-term benefits not just for your eyes, but also for your overall health. Number 12. Cacao Nibs Flavonoid Vision Boost. Raw cacao is far more than the base of chocolate. It is a potent source of flavonoids, plant compounds that improve circulation and enhance blood flow to the retina. Good circulation is critical for eye health, as it ensures the retina receives enough oxygen and nutrients to function properly. A Harvard study in 2018 found that participants who consumed cacao showed measurable improvements in visual function in as little as 2 hours. That's a striking result and shows just how quickly flavonoids can make a difference. I recall a patient, Thomas, a 66-year-old retired architect, who often complained that his vision felt sluggish after long hours of drawing and reading. He didn't have serious eye disease, but he noticed fatigue and a lack of clarity. Instead of reaching for another cup of coffee, I suggested he try raw cacao nibs as an afternoon snack. Within weeks, he told me he felt his eyes were less strained, and he had more clarity when working late into the evening. For him, cacao became a healthier alternative to processed sweets, with the bonus of supporting his vision. Now let me ask you, do you find your eyes get tired after long hours on the computer? Or does your vision feel less sharp at the end of the day? Do you reach for sugary chocolate when you need a pick-me-up? If so, swapping candy bars for raw cacao nibs or unsweetened cocoa powder could give you the same satisfaction while providing a real boost to your eye health. My advice is to use cacao in simple, healthy ways. Add a spoonful of raw cacao nibs to yogurt or oatmeal, or stir unsweetened cocoa powder into a smoothie. Avoid sugary chocolate bars, which can actually harm circulation and blood sugar control. With consistency, cacao can become a small but powerful habit that supports your vision, your energy, and your overall health. Sometimes, the foods we enjoy most can also be the ones that protect our future. As we've seen, these 12 seeds are more than just simple foods. Each one carries powerful nutrients that can protect your eyes from oxidative stress, inflammation, poor circulation, and nutrient deficiencies, the very issues that cause vision to decline with age. From sunflower seeds rich in vitamin E, to walnuts packed with DHA, to saffron with its remarkable ability to restore retinal function, these everyday foods can make a real difference in preserving the gift of sight. The lesson is clear. Vision loss is not always inevitable. By making small, consistent choices in your diet, you can protect your eyes, sharpen your vision, and maintain your independence well into your senior years. It doesn't take drastic changes. Just a handful of seeds each day can become one of the most powerful habits you create for your long-term health. So now I want to ask you, of these 12 seeds, which one are you most excited to try first? Have you already noticed improvements in your vision from adding certain foods to your diet? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, share it with a friend who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more science-backed health tips for seniors. Your support helps us keep bringing you practical, natural solutions to stay healthy and strong at every age. Take care of your eyes, take care of your health, and I'll see you in the next video.